On your question,
can the Indian defense industry profit from
yeah,
Europe's new need for defense?
We have a substantial Indian state-owned defense industry, but also now a growing Indian private sector defense industry. They are global in their interests and aspirations. It's, even the state-owned ones, these are enterprises. They make their decisions depending on where there's demand and what the market opportunities are. Normally, we leave it to them to make the business, the corporate decisions that they should, unless our national interest or our security interests are involved in some way. So I think if some of them wish to look at demands in Europe, I think that is a business decision that they should be taking. On the issue of tariffs, as I said, we have understanding that we would be negotiating a bilateral trade agreement with the United States. So that process would unfold. Our trade minister is there holding discussions right now. So one has to see where that goes.
Okay, another forest of hands. Right, I'm going to take the woman on the aisle there.
My name is Palwasha, and I wanted to ask about, you mentioned BRICS and India's role in BRICS. Do you see India's role in the Middle East, because you spoke about Ukraine, but what about the Middle East, in specific Gaza?
Okay, thank you very much. Here in the front, Kshitij. I'm going to take three this time.
Kshitij Bajpayee, Senior Research Fellow for South Asia at Chatham House. Many thanks for your very insightful remarks. I had a question about India's neighborhood. India resides in a region in which 3 countries are in the midst of IMF bailouts: Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. 2 countries could be regarded as potentially near failed states, Myanmar and Afghanistan, and 2 countries with which India has a history of difficult relations, which also happen to be nuclear weapon states, and it also has active territorial disputes. Of course, I'm referring to China and Pakistan. You also have a relatively low level of regional economic integration and institutional integration, at least compared to other regions in terms of intra-regional trade. So my question is do developments in India's neighborhood, do they hold back or undermine India's global aspirations? Or to put it more bluntly, can India rise without its region? Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to take one more right here in the front.
Thank you very much. I'm David Lubin. I'm an economist here at Chatham House. I wonder if you could comment on India's aspirations for the internationalization of the rupee, or more generally, whether you and the Indian government have a problem with dollar dominance in the international monetary system.
Great, thank you. We have the Middle East, Gaza. We have whether India can rise without its neighborhood, without relations with its neighborhood, and the internationalization of the rupee.
On the Middle East, obviously we have significant interests. I mean, depending on how you define the Middle East, if you were to include the Gulf in it, we would have more than 10 million Indians actually living there. The trade, our trade with the Gulf would be today, our exports to the Gulf alone would be close to $100 billion. Our trade with the Mediterranean is close to $85 billion. The Mediterranean has almost 500,000 Indians living in the littoral states of the Mediterranean. So if I were to, and if one looks at the footprint, the economic footprint, I mean, whether it's the Mediterranean countries, whether it's the MENA countries, whether it's the Gulf. I mean, there isn't a country where there isn't today some kind of significant Indian project, business, infrastructure activity. So yes, we would like to see a stable, safe, prosperous Middle East, but we do understand, I mean, right now the situation is very complicated. Again, we have a position which is obviously, in my view, very objective and balanced. I mean, we do condemn terrorism and hostage taking. We do believe that countries have a right to respond to that. But we also believe that humanitarian law should be observed when undertaking operations. We do think there's an urgent need to get relief and rehabilitation done in Gaza. And we strongly advocate for a two-state solution. So we have I would say, a broad spectrum, but consistent, and in our view, an objective position about it. Again, if there is and Indian peacekeepers, by the way, are deployed today both in Lebanon and in Golan Heights. So if there is some way or something we should be doing, we are open to looking at it. We have been engaging, pretty much all the players: Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, on that. So, but our sense right now is really it's largely the countries in the region who have the initiative, and the United States. So if there are countries who have that initiative and doing something, it's good that they are doing something. But our interests are that there's some kind of lasting solution found to the crisis. On your question, Kshitij, about the neighborhood, again, there are a lot of things happening on the ground. This may or may not fit into a theoretical construct. For example, if one looks at connectivity, and by connectivity I'm talking here of roads, of waterways, of electricity grid connections, of fuel supplies, of movement of people. In fact, the last 10 years has seen an extraordinary pickup that whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Nepal, even Myanmar, that every one of these countries today in some form, compared to where they were 5 or 10 years ago, are either importing or exporting more energy, are trading more, are seeing a much greater flow of wagons, buses, people, you name it, much more goods transiting through countries or to countries. So in many ways, actually, on the ground, the real economy is experiencing a very, very profound change. Now, in terms of regionalization, perhaps in a sort of conceptual way, it may not be that visible, but then do bear in mind when Sri Lanka had a very serious financial crisis, while the rest of the world largely sat on its hands, we actually came forward with a package of more than $4 billion, which was almost twice the size of the IMF package. So, and if you go rewind a bit and go look even at the COVID, between that region, like any other region, has had a COVID crisis, it's had a Ukraine crisis fallout. There have been issues coming out of the global economy because it relates to your question about availability of dollar, trade issues, liquidity crisis. We've actually stepped forward for pretty much every neighboring country, whether it was supply of vaccines, whether it was supply of food grains, whether supply of fertilizers, supply of fuel, and as I said, in Sri Lanka, actually a huge economic package. So we do see today a regional responsibility. We do believe that our neighbors must do well, and that their prosperity and our prosperity are linked, and we think our own growth could be a lifting tide, is a lifting tide for the rest of them. But while we are a larger economy and by and large we are generous and non-reciprocal, we have interests like any nation. So we also expect our neighbors to recognize that and to cater to our sensitivities as well. So I'm not saying that it has to be an equal give and take, but there are gives and takes. And I think just like we have a responsibility to our neighbors, I think our neighbors also have a responsibility to us. The third question, the Rupee.
Internationalization of the Rupee.
We are clearly promoting the internationalization of the Rupee for the very simple reason that we are actually promoting the globalization of India. There are more Indians who travel out. There are more Indians who live abroad. India's trade, India's investments, India's tourists have all grown. So along with that, the practice of using Rupee will also grow. So in many cases, for example, we have established mechanisms for cashless payments between India and some other country. We have, in certain cases, supported trade settlements, but we have also supported trade settlements because there is a shortage of hard currency in many countries, especially of dollars. So in a way, there is a steady, I would say, externalization of Rupee transactions. That's part of the globalization of India. But where the role of the dollar is concerned, I think we are very realistic about it. We have never had a problem with the dollar. Our relations with the US are probably the best ever that they have been. So we have absolutely no interest in undermining the dollar at all. On the contrary, I think a lot of the problems in our region is the lack of the availability of dollars. So I would say many countries want to see more dollar, not less.